And I was explaining Creed. I said, good day again, and I made Creator. The elders that taught me this way was always to use my language first and acknowledge the Creator. This flag was talked about by many elders over the years in Treaty 6 territory when we had our Treaty 6 gatherings. We need to educate, we need to create that awareness and understanding between our non-Aboriginal people, the people that we live with on this land that we call Canada. And we decided last year in June, we had a Treaty 6 assembly where we had a visitor from the United Nations, an ambassador, come to our territory, which I invited a year ago in February in Geneva. You'll see in a picture of that medallion, because it symbolizes that this is not a people that were conquered, and that it was at war with the French and the England to try and take dominance over this land. And some of our brothers and sisters down east were allies with the British Crown. And at the time of treaty, you'll see the hatchet in between the legs, feet of the people. It's to bury the hatchet of these wars, the time to move on, time to work together, time to settle on this land and coexistence in harmony. But the old people at the time of treaty in our area in Treaty 6, in Fort Pitt and in Fort Carleton, they did not speak English. So they relied on what they knew was part of their life, was the ceremony. And they used a lot of spiritual help and guidance. And once we know and understand the origin of the creation of this land and the story, you'll understand the spiritual part of the treaty. And I was honored by elders that have taught me this way. And it's a long, I could be here for 2 days, 3 days explaining that history. And but that's a spiritual part of the treaty. As it, many of you may take Native studies, and many of you may have taught Native studies, the written text of the treaty is not the understanding of what our ancestors had entered into. In the written text it said, cede and surrender all rights to the land. When you look back 136 years before the newcomer came to the territories which we call this prairie area, there was no unemployment, there was no poverty, there was no homelessness. There were none of these social challenges that we're faced with today in society and many amongst our people. So look at it this in context, my friends. Why would our ancestors give up everything to have nothing? Why? That's not their understanding. And the written text says we surrendered all rights to the land. Of course, there was no English amongst our people, but they had the spiritual guidance. When you look at the X mark, and many of our people don't know this, so I'm going to share this. When you look at this X mark that they put on the treaty, When you look at it this way, that's a sign of the cross. As Tyrone mentioned, the Creator, God, was the covenant through our ceremony, through the pipe. They had ceremonies and vision quests prior to entering the treaty. And this is what the ancestors were told, was to use the earth to rely on that as part of the treaty, as long as the grass grows. And the water that flows in our body, each and every one of us is human. As long as the river flows, your mind automatically thinks it's the water in the river. The spiritual understanding is the water that's amongst us, each, every one of us. As long as the sun shines, again, the creation, there's a sacred fire amongst all humans, and it's within our heart. That's from the spiritual context of the treaty, of what this represents, of the medallion that was given at that time to the leadership to acknowledge that, and the flag. And these are the origin and the thoughts behind this. I was sitting in my office with some of the people one day after the elders meeting, and I started drawing this. That's what I do with all the stuff we do, what it comes, it's on a napkin. So I did this, and I said, here, what do you think it is? Go put it on a computer. So this is what happened here. I don't believe it was me that created this, it was them that wanted me to share this with people. And this is what Onion Lake is what we're doing, going back and reclaiming our rightful place on this land. The inheritance that was given to us by the ancestors and by the Creator is the right to live and coexist on this land. So by doing this, I want to thank the President and Joan and the rest of the university and our council and drum groups for being here to witness this, because it creates an awareness and an understanding. It's time we heal. It's time we work together. Even at this scale, at the university or amongst many of the students, that we stand time to work together. What the government is doing, using the media, using all forms of tactics, attacking us. The people, the first people of this land. Did you know there was over 100 million people, our people, on Turtle Island? And there's another legend, another history of why it's called Turtle Island. There's an awesome teaching behind it. There was over 100 million, now there's just over 1 million of our people on this land. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine? Sometimes in the earlier years as chief, I've been involved a long time in our nation, helping build our community. I used to say, why did they help Columbus when he got lost? Why did they doctor him? Why did they feed him? Why did they show him? Because we are kind, compassionate people. And that's Creator's child. So they helped him. But they didn't see, they didn't think what was going to happen to us. Again, when the earth and all of Creator's creation provided everything for our people, why would our people enter into a treaty and give everything up for nothing? And then the infamous Indian Act took place. Even at the treaty, they never told the chiefs and the elders, oh, by the way, now that you've entered into the treaty, we just passed legislation in Ottawa that's going to do away and break every promise that we just made to you on behalf of the Crown. We're going to assimilate you. We're going to change you into something like us. That's what the Indian Act did through all the history that we've gone through. But you know what, people? We persevered through all that. And we're still here. And we're not going to go anywhere. We ask that we be given an opportunity to be a part of society as it was back then. Our people taught the newcomer to come on this land many things, but we weren't given that same opportunity. In fact, we were not treated as human people. We were not human beings according to the newcomer. We were not even allowed legal counsel. So how could we negotiate a treaty? And this is what they understood was the spiritual teaching, this is what they relied on. We were not allowed many things under that Indian Act. So, we fast forward to 136 years later, to this year today, it's a new beginning of working together in harmony, mutual understanding and respect, because that's what we need to do, is respect one another. Doesn't matter what race or what origin, what belief system, we are all the Creator's people. And we need to look at that from that perspective. These are teachings from our old people that I've tried to pass on to everyone whenever the opportunity arises for me to share what the elders have taught of me. And this Treaty 6 flag, this is Treaty 6 territory where everybody is on today. Treaty 6 land. There is over 76 million acres in Treaty 6 territory, 121 square miles. When you look at this history, when Confederation began in 1867, this was called Rupert's Land for hunting, Hudson's Bay fur trading. They didn't own this land. And this is something that's misunderstood by society today. When John A. Macdonald went overseas to the Queen and asked if I could take this land under the dominion of Canada, the Queen, and this is all written in records in their archives and overseas in London. The Queen gave, before he gave her royal assent for that to happen, she said, you must enter into a treaty with the inhabitants of the land, the Indians. And number two, you must provide fair, equitable compensation to the people of the land that you're going to settle on. Number one was entered into a number of treaties from 1 to 11. But number two was never followed up. We never got that compensation for the land. So this is unfinished treaty business. And Wahani Lake is working and striving towards trying to resolve that. Maybe I won't live to see it in my lifetime, but we need to begin that process. So that's when Canada created a province called Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, and the Northwest Territories. They entered into the treaty, but they didn't pay for it. And all this legislation that is in the documents, the natural resource transfer, that the province were given those rights arbitrarily by the federal government, the mineral rights for Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Nobody in our people's side was consulted or sought for approval. Because remember, it was the written text that we follow the government today. Nobody gave up the mineral rights from our side of the table. And the young people, our First Nations people, need to understand this. Because you then are going to be the ones carrying this into the future. So this land, it says in the Rupert's Natural Resource Transfer Agreement that the federal government will transfer the minerals to the provinces subject to any underlying trust. And I've said this at many forums and many of our leadership forums. There was a trust in place. That land trust, the last bit of land was sold in 1907. And then the name got changed into CRF, Consolidated Revenue Fund. That account is still alive, that fund is still there. So they were never allowed to, but because our people could not have legal counsel, we could not fight it in the courts. So I know I needed to share this with the people today, and I thank you for listening. And I want to thank our council for being a part of this. I would like them, this is what we're just talking about this morning. Succession planning, one day you will become chiefs. So you need to understand and learn about these things also. This is what we need to do, is work together. So to the President and to the University of Saskatchewan, this is our gift from the elders, from Treaty 6 territory to you, to ride proudly here, and to show to the people that are in this building and in this city that we are on Treaty 6 territory. I thank you for having that in your facility here, and say thank you once again to all people.